All right.
So now
So good morning to Gary Griffith. What's happening?
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Where's Paul?
Paul had an appointment this morning.
Yeah,
Then Peter had to pay for Paul.
Oh, Peter have to pay for Paul. Woo, you start
Who you
off.
calling Peter? Me?
I don't
So-
call
Who you calling Peter? Me? It better be Steve. You call. It better be Steve or Richard. You're calling Peter.
Good morning, man.
Don't be threatening me on national radio.
What you want to
And
talk about?
television. All right, Gary. So let's ask you our morning poll question. Do you think the TTPS responds to emergency calls in a timely manner?
And answer without saying I.
Yes or no?
Well, I can't. You see a word here. Peter, relax now. Peter, wait. I think we're trying to smear the whole police service. This is, again, going back, this was the same police service 3 years ago. So it is just that certain technologies and certain things can be reignited. So presently, we do not have that system, but it can change. And it is not to blame the police officers. It just requires that degree of proper management. You all said it. And there's not much more that I need to say. When Richard spoke about the 21st century, the problem exists is that we have gone back into that 20th century, Richard, policing, where people feel you have to call a police station to get a vehicle. Nowhere in the world you don't call a police station. The police stations are not the response for a crime scene. So that is where it is. You have things like a highway patrol, a rapid response unit, an emergency response unit. They are out there on patrol. The vehicles in police stations, they're there to do admin work. People can't and shouldn't be remember the telephone number of the Las Lomas station or the St. Clair station. You press 999. And if you press 999, immediately there must be a system. Now again, sorry Wendell, but I have to use the I. When we started seeing one person on duty and there were 10 switchboards. So this one person, that's why when you call 999, you're getting 45 minutes and they're putting you on hold while it is a crime that's going on. So at 999.
I called 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago today, and I was put on hold for 6.5 minutes, almost 7.
Yeah, and that therein lies the problem. So let's not blame the officers, it's the management. Stuart Young, when he was minister, he was proactive, and I explained that to him. I said the system you have now with civilians at that 999 switchboard, it is not working. Get the police to take over. Make sure you have 10 persons 24 hours a day. So first step is 999. Somebody must answer that call within a few seconds. I went to NYPD. I saw it, especially after 9/11. How they have it. What they have is that 911. You call, and then they're asking you, police, fire, or medical. Depending on what you say, they immediately put you to those persons. And so then you can have an immediate ambulance response in minutes. And whilst the ambulance is getting to your home, you explain that your father is lying down and they're telling you what to do. That is 21st century law enforcement, similar to policing. So you call 999. Firstly, you must have that immediate response. Secondly, when it is you make the call, you're supposed to have an operation command center. The GPS will see where that call is, and then you see the police vehicles in closest proximity. So that is where we had the emergency response patrol with the GPS on the police vehicles.
Do we have that now?
No, they've shut down everything that was there before, and that's why we never had these concerns. But I said it can easily be done. It can. So you have those 100 vehicles, 10 in each division, 24 hours a day they're patrolling. Think of the West. Imagine 3 vehicles in Port-au-Spain, 3 in Caranage, 3 in Petit Valley, 1 in Cocorite, and just patrolling. You call 999. That is where, up until 2021, when the reports came from the Police Service Commission, you had a response in less than 5 minutes average. And because of that, it will cause the criminals to know, that's why we never had home invasions then. That's why they had a few moments later. So it can easily be done. It's just to make sure you have an effective 999 system and an operational team of patrol vehicles, GPS tracked, monitored, and an operation command center to have an immediate response.
While I understand what you just explained, because that's technically how it's supposed to be, how could you absolve the police officers when people actually have been interacting with a police officer when they make a call and they're being told they don't have a car or the lack or so on? How could you absolve them if people's personal are actually personally interacting with them?
Well, you see, because they're calling the police stations, and you don't call a police station for a call, and that's the point. So the poor officers, if they are at the station and they do not have vehicles, you can't blame the officers in the station. A station is not an emergency response. It is a...
No,
you must
but
have
hold on, Gary. If I call a police station with an issue, they have a radio at the station itself where they can radio a car, can they?
But there's no... But you see, that's the point. Whereas before, and that's what I realized, in 2013 and 2015, we formed the Rapid Response Unit to deal with that. So these vehicles could do nothing else other than just wait for those calls. 2018 and 2021, we changed it into the Emergency Response Patrol, where these 100 vehicles can do nothing other than respond to a call. So they were on patrols. That's why people were seeing the high visibility. It provided the deterrent. All of these vehicles are now being used for administration, persons doing what they want. So there's not an elite established operational response unit. So all the vehicles will be out doing everything other than standing by waiting to respond to your call. That is why, again, when it says you go a few moments later, it wasn't magic that was being done. It was having 100 vehicles alone. Out of 1,700, there's 1,700 police vehicles. Now there's no such system as an emergency response patrol. They have all now been used and absorbed into stations, and stations have so many things to do. They're just selling out these vehicles willy-nilly. When you have those 100 vehicles specifically just patrolling, waiting. So in other words, if a vehicle just parks up at Wendy Fitzwilliam Boulevard for 15 minutes, the operational response center will say, you look like you're parked by your girlfriend. Drive, you need to patrol. If two vehicles stay close, that is now the only operational command center I think we have now is the one that the criminals have monitoring cameras.
Isn't that something?
Wendell indicated when we were discussing this, and just now, Gary, before you came on, that he considers this to be a low-hanging fruit for Earl Haywood Christopher, as in her new extension of a year. Do you think that that's a low-hanging fruit item that they can address?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anybody that will hope and be excited of the fact of Earl Christopher failing for political gain. You really don't care about your country. I would expect each and every citizen to hope that Earl Christopher can succeed in her second year, that she can get the job done. I always stated that people are trying to measure her performance based on the crime statistics. That is ridiculous. If she inherited a high crime rate from a predecessor, she can't just transform it overnight. It will take a year to put in new policies and systems. Sadly, she did not implement one. So if this one is definitely the lowest of all hanging fruits, because as I mentioned, all it takes is to make sure you have a 999 system with 10 persons working 24 hours a day waiting for your call. So as soon as the phone rings once, you will answer it. And then have that operational command center that was set up there in Knowsley, the same place where SSA is. I set up police command center separate. So you have the screen, and every time there's a 999 call, you see exactly where that distress call is. And then the persons now will know if your cat's stuck in a tree, that's a level 5. If it is that somebody's breaking into your home, that's a level 1. So based on the priority, you then dispatch that vehicle that is patrolling, just waiting for that response. That is what caused the deterrent. That is what made sure that the product of opportunity was not there. This can be reignited. Earl is going to be under some pressure to get that done because, just as Wendell said, it was a Gary Griffith thing, and the instructions were given not to have these things ignited. But this is affecting the country. If this thing is done, it is going to
Gary, you keep saying these things, that instructions were given to stop this, not to do this. But I can't imagine somebody holding an office as commissioner of police actually taking an instruction that would be to the detriment of the same organization that they had. I just cannot fathom it.
But Wendell, but you saw it in 2010. How you could say that? In 2010, when the government changed, you saw the SORT, the OPVs, the BLIMP. You saw in 2015 the Community Comfort Patrol, the Rapid Response Unit, the National Security Special Operation Group. You saw after I left SORT, the Operational Command Center, GPS tracking, body cameras, tasers. Administrations and people change, personalities take precedent over what is over principle. You have seen it. It has happened all the time. When government change,
if you didn't raise 2010, I would have proffered an argument. But you're right, because in 2010 everything changed when the government changed.
Thing over and over. Change, and that their thing, it will make them look good, shut it down. And we keep doing it over and over. So in 2015, I cheated. I saw the good things that Manning did. okay, an OPV fine, but we don't have to spend 1.2 billion more than what the cost was. So I got Damen vessels for 1.2 billion less. The SAUTT, I saw the value of it. That's why I cheated. I call it SORT. So you stop because it was a PNM thing. Let's just shut it down and dismantle. Look at the value and build on it. Change the name if you want to. But when you remove it totally, and that's what, remember, there were about 100 policies I put in as commissioner. That E99 I spoke about, the operational command center, the commissioner's command center, the emergency response patrol. That, Richard, that's the low-hanging fruit. It can easily be reignited. You cannot have people calling a police station and expecting a vehicle to be parked up. No vehicle is parked up in any police station. There's always, you need to get paper, you need to get ink or whatever. And
Well,
that's where you have
I mean, Steve hinted at it, Gary, that even if a citizen calls a police station because they may have called 999 and they were holding on and nobody was answering, and some people are very responsible citizens. They have stuck up on their fridges or whatever the emergency numbers, and some will have the local police station number. So if you ring 999 and you're on hold for 6-7 minutes and it's an emergency situation, you may hang up as a citizen in a crisis and say, let me call the police station directly. That's not illogical. You call that police station and that police station say, well, we have no car. First of all, the police officer, in my opinion, shouldn't tell you that. The police officer should say, ma'am, I will make sure that a vehicle comes as soon as possible. And they should deal with the problem.
Yeah.
And they should communicate with the vehicles and say, look, there is something happening at X address. Please address it. They couldn't get through a 999. But what the response is throwing it on the citizen. Come in the station tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and again, Richard, what you just spoke about again is different, because somebody, I tell you, that is 21st century policing. You recall the Prime Minister attacked me on one, many times he attacks me every day, when he said that Gary shut down Blanchishes and some other police station. And apart from that being a lie, it showed the backward thinking of politicians. We believe that police stations is a place that must be there for people to go to a station to make a report. That same Blanchishes station, for 2 or 3 months, one person went into that station. So that was the old type of policing, where people must go into a station to make a report. That is old-time policing. The more police stations you have, the more officers in a station, less officers are out on the street, less officers are patrolling. St. James Station, for example, I wanted 2 officers in the station. Everybody else get out there and walk through St. James. Same thing with every station. Get out there and do your foot patrol. Have your mobile patrols. People do not go to police stations anymore to report crime in developed countries. You have online reporting. Remember, we had the online reporting. We had the police app. Now, all of these things have gone through. So the online reporting, you have a report of fraud, domestic violence, or whatever. I mean, going back to that domestic violence situation, when you say that they might appeal, that is what I inherited. What happened with that young lady? There were many situations where women would be beaten, would be raped. They will turn up to the police station, and they had reports where I got reports of a lady was improperly dressed because she was beaten by somebody, and the police officer said, you're improperly dressed, you need to leave and come back. Another woman will be raped, and they will tell you to sit down on a bench, and sometimes for 24 hours you're sitting down there waiting, and they say you can't take a shower. That is where we formed the gender-based violence unit to put an end to all of that. When last have you heard of that gender-based violence unit? This was a unit specifically designed to ensure that you have a problem of domestic violence, you set it online, and we come to you. It is a delivery service, not police, or you having to go to a station to report that your husband beat you. Because when you do that, sometimes by the time you walk out, the same person who beat you is reported that he went to the station because he knows some police officer there. It has to be an elite unit of trained persons to deal with domestic violence. And what happened? There was a massive increase in reports. And I said, well, wait a minute, we're doing something wrong. NYPD said, no, it means now it is working, because before, women were reluctant to make the report because they know they could get probably even further beaten. So now that they realized that there was a confidence in that gender-based violence unit, reports increased, and then we started targeting the perpetrators to minimize the retaliation. Again, all of that is 21st century policing, not going to a station to make a report.
If you could just go ahead, Wendell.
No, you go, Richard. I was going to refer. Sorry, Richard. I was going to refer to the interview with the head of that unit. I think they call it victim and something now. I don't know if they're still calling it gender-based violence. Mrs. Claire Guy Allen, we spoke with her recently. Well, Paul and Richard, that is. And there was an issue of a video of a mother choking a child in the video, and the child was crying out for help. And I mean, when Miss Clegg Allen, I think she said that they needed the witnesses to come forward, or the child to say, well, in fact, mommy was in fact choking me. I listened to that interview and I found it incredulous that in this day and age we waiting on some kind of I didn't understand the words being used by a head of that unit to justify what the inaction of the TTPS. I had to say the inaction.
Yeah, but so we've gone back to pre-2018 because it's, victim and witness support unit is separate and apart from gender-based violence unit. Gender-based violence unit has been virtually removed. This is victim and witness support. So in other words, if somebody was involved in seeing a crime or affected by a crime, you provide that degree of counseling. The gender-based violence unit was a specific unit designed specifically to deal with domestic violence.
Right, I know that.
And those are,
you're saying that, unit no longer exists?
It has been virtually watered down, so that's why you don't have anything promoting it. People are not aware of it. They don't know what number to call. So we've gone back to the same situation. You get beaten, you get raped, go to a police station, and then you'll have a police officer who may not be trained. And this is not to knock the police service. We got 7,000. So if a police officer, he thinks is the norm. And we had it. I had those reports. And that's why I formed the gender-based violence unit. Your husband beat you mercilessly, and then you go to that station, you meet that same officer who doesn't have a problem with it. You report it. Well, what time you came home? 2 o'clock in the morning. What you doing coming home 2 o'clock in the morning? Women experience that in police stations because that officer, he has no problem with beating his own wife. So because it's 7,000 police officers, that is why you had the gender-based violence unit with specifically trained officers. We got this from NYPD, understanding. You can't have a woman getting beaten, getting raped, and have to go to a police station to report this because not every officer is trained and qualified to understand the sensitivity, the confidentiality of such heinous crime. So you're going back to the police station is stupidity. And again, Gary formed the gender-based violence unit, scratch. Operation Command Center, Rapid Response Unit, Emergency Response Patrol, tasers, pepper spray, National Operations Center. Who does it help, Wendell? How does it help ERLA succeed? How does it help the country? How does it make the Police Service Commission look good? Remember, it was McDonald Jacob that fired 21 heads of specific units that we formed that will be actually heavily involved in lifting the standard of the police service. So when you say that you can't see them doing it, it did happen.
Tell me something. In terms of the police service app, does it still exist?
Yes, of course.
I wasn't sure if it still existed. And so it still has an SOS feature. I remember it had an SOS feature or something like that.
Sorry, the police app. No, sorry. That was shut down. It was the most popular app in the country, 400-something thousand hits. Again, Gary Griffith put that app in, so they shut it down. Even though it was one of the most popular apps in the country. The SOS that was put on your phone, that has also been shut down. The online reporting has died as well, where it is people will report fraud, cybercrime, domestic violence. You put it online, you see it, and then we come to you. It's a delivery service we were given. And those, yeah, so I'm sorry, Wendy, yeah, all of that, they've all been shut down.
I wanted to segue now to the SSA. I know you would have been interviewed, at least the newspapers report that you were interviewed by the TTPS on the issue of, well, the investigating officers with regard to the SSA imbroglio. Of course, several people have now been detained with regard to that in terms of weapons and transference of weapons and stuff like that. Are you concerned? Do you think that the whole SSA issue is one of real national security concern? Because the Prime Minister certainly, when this first erupted, came from the office of the Prime Minister, and it was considered, it was worded as a national security threat. I don't want you to, of course, you may be bound by some level of confidentiality in whatever you would have reported, but how concerned are you about this issue?
Well, obviously, it is a matter of national importance. Somebody has to take responsibility for what has happened. Going back to the situation here, we have a director of the SSA that was removed from office. And now And again, they came to me to get some clarification on certain things. And so going back to the to this situation, things I can state without affecting the investigation. In 2010, when SAUTT was disbanded, the then government, the then Ministry of National Security, took all the assets in SAUTT, sought, and distributed it equally between the police, the Defense Force, and SSA, inclusive of firearms. In 2016, the then Minister of National Security then handed over all of Komuto Barracks, Komuto Station, to the SSA for administration purposes. So SSA became responsible for all the items. So that is what I knew. That's the only involvement I have based on what I knew from history. And then the SSA directors with other persons, they may make requests to have persons as SRP. So whether you're in charge of cybercrime, whether you're in charge of fraud, they may have persons who you feel that could be of value to enhance the operational capability of their unit, who are civilians who are highly qualified in that specific field. So SSA likewise will have the same requests, and they will make requests for SRPs, and those persons will be approved by the commissioner. And it will continue because the commissioners after me continue to extend those same SRPs. If somebody is a SRP, he's a police officer, so he has full authorization to sign for and to be issued a firearm that belongs to the Ministry of National Security. If it is that, and so that is all that I know. If it is that anybody did anything differently and the matter is being investigated, well then it is right that obviously the state will explain this is what happened, so that this police officer was using illegal weapons, or this police officer was involved in something to compromise national security. But as it is at this time, they have not stated what it is that they are being investigated or arrested for.
But there is some inference that there was some mollycoddling, so to speak, with some elements of the criminal world in terms of the transference of this, which has to be very bothersome to citizens, because this is an elite agency where you expect the people to be of a certain caliber, and yet there is an inference that there was some criminal colluding with criminal elements taking place. So that has to be considered. And you know what was also, I don't know if the timelines matter, but it was at the point that the Prime Minister was in the US, and I think he was having meetings with the CIA, etc. And then he said a special branch, a few days later, he said special branch made a report about the whole issue going on in SSA, and hence the dominoes fell in the way they fell, so to speak. Out of that incident, I kept wondering whether it is that there was some intelligence coming out from the Americans concerning the issue, that also that they probably had some intelligence that something was going on and passed it on to the Prime Minister, either personally or, I mean, I'm just speculating, because
you're going in the right direction. Those things are quite possible. I mean, being a previous security advisor, commissioner, minister of national security, at times we have support elements we can get from our international allies, and if that is the case, so be it. But they will probably just give intelligence. What will be required now is for special branch or whoever in the police service to turn that intelligence into evidence, and I think that is what they're trying to ascertain. If it is based on rumor and improper intelligence, it is going to be a slap in the face of the government, because somebody has to go to jail, and for good reason. If not, it will be seen that this is another email gate, is another firearm audit, where all of this took place with all of these accusations and not one person arrested or charged. If it is that and you know, there's usually this charge that people use, that we use, what is it, misbehavior in public office. Now that is, when you use that charge, it could be anything. It means everything. It says everything and means nothing. You must have a reason for it. You can't just say misbehavior in public office. What it is that they did that caused them to misbehave in office? Is it that they used illegal firearms? Is it that they took firearms out of the armory without signing for it? Is it that they were lending it to criminal elements? They must inform the country along that line. Don't just say the person is charged for misbehaving in public office. State exactly what illegal activity. There must be an illegal activity in breach of the Constitution. So that is what we have to wait to ascertain. But you are correct.
How does the state, and by the state, it's a dual head here, the government, because they would enact policy and legislation, and the TTPS, which is in control by and large with a lot of the security apparatus. Of course, the SSA was kind of like an asylum by itself, at least my understanding of it. And how, when something like this happens, and it happens so obviously, I mean, it's on the front page of a couple of the newspapers this morning, how does the state rebuild confidence in the citizenry when you have such going-ons allegedly at such high levels in terms of the national security apparatus?
Well, it happens, Richard. It is difficult to build back. I mean, even with myself, when TTPS, the public trust and confidence in the TTPS was 14%. No one trusted the police service. It was seen as the least trusted. It takes a while, and it took me 3 years to turn that from 14% to 59%, from the lowest to the highest. If you don't continue on that standard, it will go to what it is now, 8%. So it is all based on leadership and trying to get the public to buy into the fact that we have transformed, we have made mistakes, and be honest, be transparent. But we've seen it with the Oliver North in the 20th century. We've seen it with even the CIA and the FBI with incidents of persons in high office acting inappropriately. It happens around the world. In this situation, the difference with the SSA, or our SSA or SSA, everyone is polygraphed. There's a strong polygraph that is done. So it makes it more difficult for them to be involved in compromising situations that can affect national security. Unless, of course, the SSA is the ones who do the polygraph of the SSA officers. But if it is that mistakes have taken place, I think there needs to be a degree of transparency, not hiring a Stanley John or an audit committee to just say that it is rumored and I have heard and it is alleged. This is the SSA we're speaking about. It can't be rumshop talk. We have to, eventually the state will have to admit to state what it is that they have done wrong that has caused persons to be arrested and I think even possibly charged. And if that is the case, let us know. And if it is that there definitely was some degree of illegal activity, then what the government did was correct, because now they had to make sweeping changes. You can't put that under the carpet. SSA is responsible. They have the capability to intercept your phone. I actually saw the document where it is that all that my phones were intercepted without any reason. And all of these things, it shows that, and even before 2010, the SIA then, they were intercepting the phones of 53 persons who may be opposed to Patrick Manning at the time, inclusive of Keith Rowley's name was there, Kamala Prasad, Gary Griffith, Winston Dukaran. Those things cannot and should not happen. So we need to make sure that SSA, even more than the police service, is way above board.
Yeah, and that the oversight of that agency is robust in terms of whatever their processes are.
No, definitely, but there lies the difference. You see, the Police Service Commission has oversight over the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner of Police. In the SSA, that person, there's no oversight per se other than the Minister of National Security. And the minister is not trained or qualified in law enforcement, an SSA or any agency like that, there would be the opportunity for something to take place because there's no oversight. But as I said, my personal view is I know the individual who headed the SSA. He joined the army around the same time with me. I've never seen or heard of him involved in any questionable activity. The only thing, the man is a God-fearing person. But again, I am not here to judge or cast aspersions on anyone. If it is that there's some degree of illegal activity, come and tell the country. But you can't go and charge someone for misbehaving in public office. There was a very senior police, let me quickly add, there was a very senior police officer. He actually applied for DCP. He was charged for misbehaving in public office because he was outside the building. Two other police officers, they were inside the building. They abused someone, and they charged the senior police officer who was outside for misbehaving in office and never charged the officers for what they did. And those things are going to you realize, is the police service going in the right direction? Is it because he was a very high-ranking person and you wanted to cut him down? Those things, using misbehaving in public office is a very dangerous colonial type law that cannot be used as an avenue to totally embarrass someone, disgrace them, destroy their character, and then after 2 years, when they finally go to court, you realize the matter will be thrown out, but the damage has already been done.
Yeah, there's a vicarious responsibility, isn't there? But let me ask you this, Gary. Who was the head of the SSA during your term as Commissioner of Police?
Colonel George Robinson was the head of the SSA, and then after his contract ended, just about my last year as Commissioner, the government, the Ministry of National Security, then handed over the directorship of the SSA to Major Roger Bess. Major Roger Bess has been in SAUTT. So since this was pre-2010, Roger Best has been part of SAUTT, and then he went into the SSA after SWAT was disbanded.
Okay. All right. All right.
Earlier this morning, I don't know if you were watching the program. We showed 2 videos that have gone viral across the country, which may be under the rubric of citizens under attack again. And there were 2 incidents. One with a family fighting off 3 of the family members, basically trying to fight the 3 miscreants that crossed into the yard, and the other one of a woman playing with her dog, and the 2 gentlemen entered and steal a vehicle. I don't know if you've seen the videos.
I did.
Right. And which, of course, gets citizens angry because they feel like they're on the front line in terms of, well, they are on the front line in terms of the fight against criminals and being susceptible to criminal elements. One of our callers called in today, Lincoln, who has some military background, and he's saying that this makes the case for medium, and when they could correct me if I'm using the words wrong, medium artillery, or medium...
Yeah, a weapon that could fire off several rounds at the same time.
Medium artillery, something like that. Medium artillery, I'm sure he's listening. Medium artillery in terms of like licensed firearms for homeowners, so that they can better protect themselves rather than just have a pistol, a medium level sort of firearm that could fire off shots, so they will know not to come in. That would have dissuaded the criminal element from coming in. What are your thoughts on that, though? That's what I want to
Definitely not. I don't agree with that whatsoever. And coming from me, the Gondilero of Trinidad Tobago, you will be shocked. But that is not the way to go. That is what you call militarizing our society. There is no need for any law-abiding citizen to have an automatic weapon to protect themselves from criminal elements. And I'll tell you why. When it is that, again, sorry, Wendell, I have to use the I. When it is we got down to that, my last year, without the SOE and the curfew, because people PNM till they die say, oh, it's because of curfew. My last year, May 2020 to May 2021, without any SOE, any curfew. So it was just like any regular period. There were 340 murders for the year. And it meant that we were cracking it. Every year, if you keep cracking it down 20%, which is part of the threshold for the Police Service Commission measuring your performance annually, which I can't understand how Ola got good. When it is you do that, eventually when you reach back down to say, so the plan was, by now, after every year, when you keep going down 15 to 20%, we'll be down to less than 200. Why should we have a society that feels that they must protect themselves to that extent? Because the state is now able to protect you, by and large. And so when you reach back to that threshold of pre-2000, the year 2000, when the police and the law enforcement have control of the country, illegal firearms are no longer coming in. You still have these individuals with assault weapons, and that can be dangerous to society. So it is not proper. In fact, what I was doing was just the opposite. I was pushing heavily for each and every citizen to have pepper spray. If they had pepper spray in that situation, I think the individual had a knife. You have to, it is something known as minimum use of force, gentlemen. And that minimum use of force involves making sure you have the equivalent capacity to retaliate based on what is coming to you. So, and the problem we have now in our present law, if a man is coming up with a knife and you fire, and you shoot at him, sometimes police saying, well, that wasn't equal. It's not supposed to be equal. It's to make sure you neutralize the individual. You can neutralize any individual with a sidearm. And even that, as I said, it's only 25,000 people who have applied for firearms out of 1.4 million. I only issued 3,000 to civilians, which was 0.3% of the population. Yet the Prime Minister said that my plan was to give for firearms to everyone. I think what should happen is that those 25,000 should at least have the common courtesy. We have the common courtesy to respond to their concerns. And if it must be nothing more than a sidearm.
Gary, I just have one more thing before we wrap up.
Yeah, we gotta wrap up.
And it is the issue of the two latest videos with police officers. One where the police officer confronted someone outside of a bar, and the person disarmed him and shot him and killed him. And the other one was where the young man went into the bar again to rob, allegedly to rob three people, one of whom was a police officer, and he drew his firearm, shot the young man, but the young man in trying to get away also fired off a shot and end up killing that police officer. Do you think some sort of retraining or retooling needs to be done in the TTPS in particular, especially with people, off-duty police officers who have legal firearms and so on, based on those 2 videos alone?
Yeah, definitely. We could even go back to the Grand Bazaar incident a couple of years ago, where 2 police officers were shooting at each other, and they were holding the firearm and doing this, like they were trying to throw the round at the, and they were shooting like this. And when you see that, you automatically realize they have never gone on a range. And we had many officers like this, and that is why the negligent discharges in police stations, it is pretty high in comparison to other countries. And sometimes it is not, it's just kept secret, and they say it was a car that backfired. We must have intense training. The one thing, and again, that's why my training from the Defense Force and the police. In the Defense Force, every single soldier must do an annual training test on elementary topics, and making sure they know how to strip a firearm, how to use a firearm, how to draw a firearm, making sure they know how the safety systems to prevent a negligent discharge. That is critical. We started doing that constantly, and it must be done for legal firearm holders as well, because we have persons who have firearms and for decades they will never have used or fired it. And the time it is required, you'll get a stoppage because you never cleaned it, you never used it, you'll have an inaccurate shot. So the system that the police was doing recently to make sure that persons must be qualified to keep them updated in the use of the firearm they possess, that is very critical. People criticize the for this. It is important that persons must be trained. But again, it shows I would not ask someone, if it is, you're going to a bar and you're going to drink a lot of alcohol. We see people lose their firearms because of that. They leave it on the toilet there, the washroom, and they come out and they forget it. So there's a touch and go situation. But again, it goes to the importance of making sure law-abiding citizens such as bar owners can have a firearm, and police officers must be constantly trained in knowing how to use the firearm, inclusive of persons who have FUL.
Yeah. All right.
All right, that was good after this morning. So Gary, thanks so much for joining us again this morning on the Power Breakfast Show. We always appreciate your input.
All the best. Give Paul my love.
Yeah, we will. Love is always accepted.
Love is it. When they get him in, America dance again. That's all I want to see. And I want to see Mary dance.
Come and see Love is a Walk now.
Love is a walk.
Come and see Love is a Walk.
Yeah, it might remind you of something. Go and see it.
All right.
All right, Gary.